Hello everyone. This monument right here is located in Caloocan and it is called the Bonifacio Monument, sculpted by Guillermo del Toro. You might be wondering, what does this monument have to do on our topic? Well, this monument right here signifies the turning point of us Filipinos revolting against Spaniards. The event is called the First Cry of Rebellion. But first, I would like to point out that there are several disputes regarding this matter. Some says it happened in Pugadlawin, and others says it actually happened in Balintawak. But in our presentation, we're only focusing to the account of Guillermo Masangkay, who claimed that the first cry of rebellion happened at Balintawak.
Good morning, everyone. Let us all find out who is Guillermo Masangkay and his relevancy to the cry of Balintawak. Guillermo Masangkay is actually Andres Bonifacio's friend and advisor. He was one of the Katipunan's founding members. Masangkay, who was one of the eyewitnesses to the cry of rebellion, is a key source of information on what transpired there. Masangkay's narrative states that the meeting took place at Apolonio Samson residence in Balintawak, Caloocan, which at that time was the cabeza of the barrio, and at about 9 a.m. of August 26, 1896, the meeting was opened with Andres Bonifacio presiding and Emilio Jacinto acting as secretary.
You might be asking, why did it even happen in the first place? Well, the Katipuneros wanted to organize a revolution to signify their protest against the Spanish colonialism. So, on the 26th of August in 1896, a big meeting was held in Balintawak at the house of Apolonio Samson. Among those who attended were Masangkay, Emilio Jacinto, Aguedo del Rosario, Tomas Remigio, Bricio Pantas, Teodoro Plata, Pio Valenzuela, Enrique Pacheco, Francisco Carrion, and Andres Bonifacio. They were all leaders of the Katipunan and composed the board of directors of the organization. Delegates from Bulacan, Cabanatuan, Cavite, and Morong were also present as well. At around 9 a.m. of August 26, the meeting was held and was opened with Andres Bonifacio presiding and Emilio Jacinto acting as secretary. The purpose of this meeting was to discuss when the uprising was to take place. Upon discussion, Teodoro Plata, Bricio Pantas, and Pio Valenzuela were all opposed to starting the revolution too early. They reasoned that if the revolution was launched without sufficient planning, then the people would essentially suffer. Plata also made a strong case for the uprising's impossibility of beginning without the soldiers' supplies of food and weapons. Now, I'm going to pass it off to Julian to tell you more about the event.
Andres Bonifacio sensing that he would lose in the discussion, so he left the session hall and talked to the people who were waiting outside for the result of the meeting of the leaders. He then told the people that the leaders were arguing against starting the revolution early, and appealed to them in a fiery speech in which he said, "You remember the fate of our countrymen who were shot in Bagong Bayad. Should we return to the towns now? The Spaniards will only shoot us. Our organization has been discovered, and we are all marked men. If we don't start the uprising, the Spaniards will get us anyway. What then do you say? Revolt!" The people shouted as one. Bonifacio then asked the people to give a pledge that they would revolt. He told them that the sign of the slavery of the Filipinos was the cedula tax that was charged to each citizen. "If it is true that you are ready to revolt, I want to see you destroy your cedulas. It will be a sign that all of us have declared our severance from the Spaniards." When the people's pledge was obtained by Bonifacio, he returned to the session hall and informed the leaders of what took place outside. Bonifacio said, "The people want to revolt, and they have been destroyed their cedulas. So now, we need to start the uprising. Otherwise, the people by hundred will be shot, and there was no alternative." The board of directors voted in favor of the revolution in spite of the protests of Plata, Plantas, and Valenzuela. And after they decided, the people outside shouted, "Long live the Philippines!"
What does cedula signify? The cedulas are used as a permit or tax certification issued by the government. The Guardia Civil had the authority to detain and arrest anyone who couldn't provide their cedula. Then, Bonifacio requested a vow of support from the populace for a revolution. He explained to them that the cedula fee levied on every citizen was a proof of Filipino savagery.
So before we proceed to the last part, I would like to introduce to you some other people who claim that the Cry of Rebellion took place in Balintawak. So the first person is an officer of the Spanish Guardia Civil named Olegario Diaz, who stated that the Cry of Rebellion took place in Balintawak on August 25, 1896. Historian Teodoro Calao, in his 1925 book, The Filipino Revolution, stated that the Cry of Rebellion happened on the last week of August of 1896 at Kangkong, Balintawak. Another historian, Gregorio Zaide, stated in his book in 1954 that the cry took place in Balintawak.
The cry was an involved liberation. Our understanding of its historical significance is predicted on the awareness that the Filipino people had at last understood the value of freedom and independence. It signaled the beginning of the bloody revolution in the Philippines. There could be also a debate over the precise time and location of the cry, but there is no debate over Bonifacio and the Katipuneros' bravery or the significance of the action. To point out their opposition against Spanish control, they tore their cedulas. Once we think back on this action, we are struck by the courage of the Filipinos who fought bravely and violently until the top against an opponent from foreign land with superior weapons. I'd wish to think of it as nothing other than freedom of expression, because a lot of individuals came together to fight in unison over some concerns that they considered to be too constricting or beneath them to control. Thus they, together with the others, tore their cedulas, voiced their frustration. It demonstrated how deeply those people felt, thought, and cared about each other. Because it embodies the bravery and tenacity of each Filipinos, the cry of Balintawak is critical in history and particularly for Filipinos. Despite disagreements over the dates and location, the cry of the Filipino revolutionaries should still motivate the present Filipino 123 years after this historic event. We don't live under a cruel foreign dictator who denies us our dignity. Not must we engage in a military conflict to maintain our independence. Whether or not the battlefield has altered, heroic behavior remains essential.